By the way, Haskell, we're just meeting for the first time today. I was always impressed with your deep, beautiful voice. He sounds like a radio announcer. He really does. He would do well in that. But don't change jobs. I think you're well suited. I'm like you. Of course I'm retired now, and perhaps some of you are nearing retirement, and you're wondering what the Lord has in store for you in future years. By the way, I'll save you from guessing. 3 months from today, I will turn 75. Okay? So, is the Lord through with us when we finish our professional career, or whatever you want to call that? No, absolutely not. There's always something you can do. You can write, and you can give Bible studies, and just, numerous things. When I retired at the end of full-time ministry, I was the senior pastor of the Hagerstown Church, and that was in 2005. And even before that time, I was getting involved in prison ministry in Washington County, Maryland there, and I was very involved in that. And also, toward the end of that, I started doing editing and proofreading for the Review. And I was a freelancer doing proofreading and copy editing for the Review for a number of years there. So there are many, many avenues that are open to us after we retire. I never, ever dreamed that I was going to write a book. That was kind of the last thing that I ever expected. It's not easy to write a book. It's a hard task. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of dedication. But I'm presenting that to you this evening. You can see the pictures on the screen. And I'll tell a little bit more about the book later. But just to kind of create a bond with you and help you know me better, I want to tell you a little story, a little experience. Have you ever had anything humorous happen to you in your ministry? Anything really funny? Well, let me tell you mine, okay? At this particular time, I was pastoring the Urbandale Church near Battle Creek, Michigan. And there was in the congregation an older lady. I would say at the time she was probably in her late 60s, early 70s, and she was of Jamaican heritage. I think I saw my Jamaican friend here a little while ago, and we had a big hug. But she came to me one day and she says, "Pastor," she says, "I feel that I need to be rebaptized." Now, you've dealt with that too, haven't you? You've had people come to you and say that. And of course, you don't take that lightly, but yet you don't want it to be trivial. And so I counseled with her, and finally we decided, yes, this is probably appropriate. And so the day came for the baptism, and here we are. I'm already down in the baptismal tank, and the deaconess is helping her down the stairs, and I'm helping and reaching out to her and taking the little handkerchief and so on. And so I'm getting ready to pronounce the blessing on her and to put her under. What she didn't tell me was that she was wearing a wig. I think you're already getting the picture. I put her down. I had no idea. And when I brought her up, she was totally bald. And my wife will testify that in the congregation, probably about 300 people there that day, there was this collective gasp, like this. So now I'm supposed to be the dignified pastor, right? So I held myself tight as best I could, tried to keep a straight face, helped her up the stairs, handed her off to the deaconess, picked up the wig, handed it off to the deaconess, because it was floating on top of the water. And so we got through that, but I went around to the back, and I just laughed and laughed and laughed. I let it all out, and I had to preach that morning. So maybe you've had something similar or maybe different that has happened to you. About 4 or 5 years ago, before I retired, I was pastoring in semi-retirement a church in Smithburg, Maryland. Dave knows where that is. Dave was my youth pastor for a few years there back in Hagerstown. George was my associate pastor before that time. And by the way, Ken Lee, I'm so sorry he's not here tonight. He was my student pastor in Coloma, Michigan when he was at Andrews. And there's others of you that I've known, Kevin and Karen Pyers and so on. But I wanted to do some seminars with this little group of maybe 25 people. And we did the Daniel meetings, and we did Revelation and some health things, and I wanted to do something unique. And the idea came to me to create a seminar based on the sanctuary that would be for the general public. And I began to kind of lay it out in my mind, but I never really got around to it. And then, of course, we decided to retire. We sold our home in Maryland. We now live in Ringgold, Georgia, just outside of Collegedale, and found a nice country home down there. And so lots of things happened, and I never did get around to it until about a year and a half ago. I said, I've got to do this before I get too much older. And I went up to Paul Smith, our associate pastor there at McDonald Road, and he's in charge of the Wednesday night series. We have a thing called Wednesday Night Out, where we have twice a month only. We have, in addition to a Bible study, we have classes. It might be basket weaving or who knows what, you know. And open to the general public, and they serve a nice little supper there for the folks. So I said, Paul, I really want to do this, and I think if I would make an agreement with you that this would give me incentive to finish the project. And so I began to write the lessons. It developed into 12 lessons on the sanctuary of an evangelistic or outreach nature. And this is what I'm presenting to you tonight as the fruit of this labor. The presenting it in a McDonald Road situation was kind of a testing time to check it out, see how it would go. And one of the elders came up to me afterward and he says, Jim, he says, that was fantastic. You ought to write that into a book. Well, guess what? I got to work, and that's what occurred. And I'm going to be showing that to you. This is what the book looks like. It's about 130 pages, and you'll get to see it. We'll be back at the table there following if you'd like to look at it. If you want to buy one, take one home. If you want to buy a bunch for your church to do prayer meeting or something. But it's a very versatile type of document. And I actually, this past week, I took one down to an office supply store, and I had mine spiral bound, so I can use it up front. And so in the first half of the book is the student lessons, and in the back half are the teachers' guides with the answers and commentary and so on. So I think it's pretty useful. And I have and the book came out in November, about the middle part of November, so it's brand new. I've already been interviewed on Life Talk Radio. I'm doing this meeting here for you folks. I've already signed up to be one of the seminar presenters at Georgia Cumberland Camp Meeting. And I've got other avenues. I may be going to other conferences to do this, depending on the timing and our energy and all of that. But God is really, really opening up opportunities. I have a nice website, which I will share with you after a bit here. And through my website, I have sold books as far away as Australia, New Zealand, and Brazil. And so it's very, very exciting to be involved in some kind of a ministry like this. Well, this is what appears on my website. The book in both English and Spanish. However, the Spanish, which I also translated, since we're ex-missionaries, has not come out yet from the press. It's still in the process, you know. It's quite an involved process. Just a few things about myself. I'm not going to read all of this, but just to let you know a little bit about myself. We do have mission experience in Uruguay and Brazil. We're both fluent in Spanish and Portuguese. And my wife, by the way, was born in Serbia, and her mother tongue is really Hungarian. So we are kind of multilingual. We've done mission trips all over the world, including the Philippines and Europe and so on. And in addition, one other thing that I want to mention here, that I am world president of the Adventist Amateur Radio Association International. If there's any hams here, any radio hams in the group? None? Well, you probably have some in your churches because I talk to people in the Carolinas quite often. So just as a little aside, one of my other tasks. Rick Remmers is the president of the Chesapeake Conference, and he gave me a glowing endorsement. Again, I don't want to take time to read every word here, but he has really stood behind me. Here's a very nice one from Dr. Gully of Southern. And he also, I gave him the manuscript, and he's a very busy man. By the way, he's had some health problems lately. Norman and I are good friends. But he wrote a very, very nice endorsement. I have one from Dick O'Phil, from Carol Zarska, the prayer ministries lady up in West Virginia. And this is what one of the men from our church wrote about his experience in attending this seminar in 2013-2014. Okay? And then when it was finished in the spring of 2014, that's when I really got to work. I got connected with Teach Services, which is an independent Adventist publisher, and we worked through that. This KL, a pastor in South Carolina, happens to be Ken Lee. But I didn't put his name on the web page just for privacy purposes. I want to begin to tell you now a little bit about the philosophy that undergirds this book and unifies it. This is a quote from Gospel Workers. Ellen White wrote, "We are living in the last days, when error of a most deceptive character is accepted and believed, while truth is discarded. God calls upon us to work diligently in gathering up the jewels of truth and placing them in the framework of the gospel." I want you to pick up on that. In all their divine beauty, they are to shine forth in the moral darkness of the world. Now then, if our truths are to be placed in the framework of the gospel, and if the sanctuary message is the gospel, then I think they go together very nicely, and that's what I've done in this book. I have given our pastors and elders and leaders and so on a book that they can use to share the full message with people based in the sanctuary. You'll find the second coming in here, you'll find the Sabbath in here, the law of God, the covenants, the state of the dead, the millennium. It's all in the sanctuary message. Not every doctrine that we believe. I mean, I've even seen people talk about the health message, in connection with the sanctuary. I did not take that approach. So anyway, that is the philosophy of this book, placing our truths in the framework of the gospel. So now I want to go through a listing of some of these basic principles and features of this work here, which I think you'll find to be very valuable. The sanctuary is the gospel. Therefore, the lessons show how our basic truths emanate from the sanctuary. The sanctuary is both pageant and prophecy. Now, I make this statement right in the introduction to my book. What do I mean by that? Well, it's just like the Lord's Supper is a pageant that we observe every quarter, and it illustrates an event that already happened, which is, of course, the crucifixion. The pageant of the sanctuary represented the whole gospel plan. Now, you hear some denominations talk about full gospel. I believe we have the full gospel. I believe that the gospel that we proclaim includes not only salvation through Jesus Christ, as basic as that is, but it's also sanctification and glorification. It's all three. You have, and I'll say a little bit more about that when I get to one of my diagrams here, but the pageantry of the sanctuary teaches us all about God's plan to dispose of the sin problem. That's what it's all about. The studies in this book are entry level. They are not deep studies that are for most people, are going to be difficult to handle. I think we have I should say it this way. I have a friend, Darwin Whitman, who goes into the sanctuary in great detail, all the colors, all the pillars, and all those things. That's fine. I have no argument with that. He does a good job, and I've met him in person, and we've discussed some of our different approaches. But I think there's a need for something more basic, something that people out there can grasp and hold on to. By the way, I have these little, I'm going to give you one of these at the end here. I have these little postcards that I carry always in my pocket. And everywhere I go, I give them away. I don't care. I engage people in conversation, and I say, oh, by the way, I'm an author. Would you like to see about my book? I do that all the time. She knows. She's with me most of the time. And I just sold this book to a lady who is a store clerk in a clothing store. And, it's wonderful. Who knows what the Holy Spirit can do with that, So the studies are entry level rather than very detailed. We are more interested here in the great controversy theme and the big picture. And you will notice that as you peruse the book. The studies are Bible in hand. I do not print the texts in the book. Now, if I did, the book would be twice as thick, for one thing, and much more costly. But by having people have their Bible on one side and their book on the other side and pen in hand, you're getting intellectual here, you're getting the kinesthetic, and so on. You're getting the full approach of the visual and so on, all the different learning styles rolled into one. And so I think people are going to learn and remember what they study here by doing that in that way. So I do not put the Bible texts in the lesson, or I don't put them on the PowerPoints either. And by the way, I have a full set of PowerPoints. I have them in two forms. You can either buy them on a little disc here, or you can download them absolutely free from my website. No charge. So it's just a service that we're providing. The lessons are very Christ-centered and thoroughly Adventist. I think you'll find that to be true. The title, Secrets and Mysteries of the Lost Ark. It's an intriguing title, I believe. I don't take credit for that. It's just something that the Lord put in my head, and here it is, Secrets and Mysteries of the Lost Ark. And people look at that, and of course, I told the cover artist, I said, be sure and put a picture of the Ark of the Covenant on the cover, and not Noah's Ark, so they know immediately what ark we're talking about. And by the way, just to tickle your mind a little bit, there are 5 arks in the Bible, and I describe them in my book. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. You'll have to find that out. The series has been field tested at the McDonald Road Church near Collegedale in a weekly prayer meeting series. It was very well received. The book contains 12 lessons and is divided into 2 sections, the study guide and the teacher's guide, or the answers at the back. And you say, well, maybe people will cheat and look, well, hey, so what? I want them to learn, I want them to learn what the Lord is teaching us. PowerPoint programs are already done in Spanish, even though the book is not yet done in Spanish, and that is also on my website, and so on. Now, I want to show you chapter by chapter a little bit about how the book works and the doctrines that it brings out. So here we go. The first chapter is called The Search for the Lost Ark, and it gives some backgrounds about the ark and talks about some of the other arks, and just kind of gets things going. By the way, the camp meeting at Collegedale that I'm going to be presenting, I'm supposed to do 12 lessons and condense them down into 5 sessions. That is going to be a challenge, but we're going to figure that out some way. The second lesson is called Jesus in the Sanctuary, Christ's atoning sacrifice and heavenly ministry, the great controversy, and the character of God. So we need to nail down those important principles. Number 3, Jesus predicts the destruction of the temple, and it leads very naturally to the second coming of Christ. The 4th chapter is called The Covenant of the Ark, rather than the Ark of the Covenant. And the focus here is on explaining the Old Covenant, the New Covenant, and so on. And I might have a little bit of a different thought about the covenants, but you go up, for example, to some evangelical or something and ask them, how were people saved in the Old Testament? Just ask them that sometime and see what kind of answer you get. How were people saved in the Old Testament? I had one tell me, well, they were saved by keeping rules. Well, Can anybody be saved that way? No, not at all. Do you know when grace started? When did grace started? Exactly. When God provided the covering for them and the lamb died right there as a sacrifice. The 5th chapter is called the Ark's Environment, and here we begin now. Chapters 5, 6, and 7 get into Daniel and Revelation, mostly Daniel, and leading up to the 70 weeks and the 2,300 days. So now we're beginning to get a little heavier, just a little bit, and bringing out about the daily and yearly services. And then number 6 is the Christ coming to the temple predicted, the 70 weeks prophecy. Chapter 7 is the cleansing of the temple, which is the 2,300 days and the judgment. Number 8 is the contents of the ark. And here we talk about the law of God, the 10 Commandments, law and grace, the mercy seat, and those issues. Number 9, parables of the kingdom. Here's an interesting thing, a different approach to the state of the dead subject. Have you ever studied the parables of Jesus? Matthew 13, Matthew 25. The parable of the net, the fish. What does Jesus say, or when does Jesus say the harvest takes place? When? When does the harvest take place? At the end of the world. It's the same thing in all the parables there in Matthew 13 and 25. Same thing, always in the end of the world. So how can somebody go to heaven or hell before that time if the judgment hasn't even taken place? So we bring that out, first of all, from that standpoint. Number 10 is holiness to the Lord. Holiness, dedication to God. Here I suppose you could go into church standards if you wish to. I don't really directly confront that issue. Heavenly mediation, Christ as our mediator and the work of the Holy Spirit. And 12, the ark of safety. And that's one of the 5 arks. The ark of safety is the church. Because Peter talks about how people of Noah's day were saved by water. He makes that comparison. So anyway, that's a little bit about that. Here's some different ways to use this. For personal study, I have sold a lot of these to individuals who aren't pastors, aren't elders, aren't leaders of any kind. They just want to study the sanctuary for themselves. By the way, there's a good possibility that this is going to be picked up by Messiah's Mansion also as one of their books that they carry with them on in their travels and sell. In Bible studies, public meetings and seminars, prayer meetings, classes, small groups, prison ministry, gifts for family and friends, and sharing. And I have a friend in Maryland that I talk to occasionally on ham radio, and he bought one of my books, and he said, "Jim, this is fantastic. This book should be in every school." That's what he said. Our kids are not learning the sanctuary. He said it should be in our schools, our academies, our colleges, and the young people, need to be brought up to speed on this marvelous truth. Now let me show you a little bit about the book from the inside. This is kind of faint here, but I guess you can tell there are blanks where people can fill in. Most of the blanks have lines drawn like that. And here's a page from the teachers section. You can see in red, it's the same exact questions. If you're an instructor, you don't even have to turn to the front of the book. You just start teaching from the back part, and you've got laid out in front of you a lot of commentaries and so on. Now I'm going to show you just a little bit of the PowerPoints, just kind of how they work. Here, I'm going to reveal one of the secrets here now. I guess I let the cat out of the bag here, but that's okay. What 3 arks are described for us in the Bible: Noah's Ark. The next one's going to surprise you. Baby Moses' ark. Did you know that, at least in the King James Version, it says that Jochebed created an ark for baby Moses? So does ark have, all these arks, do they have any kind of a common thread? Safety, yes. Security, safety, protection. God's hovering over us, and so I believe and of course the Ark of the Covenant is the plan of salvation. You've got law and grace right there portrayed visibly. Where was the Ark located? In the most holy place. What was the Ark like? A wooden chest, etc. What was placed on top of the Ark? What was inside the Ark? And what was the purpose of the ark. So this is just a little sample of the PowerPoints that are designed to match the teaching of the book. And then I do have some diagrams, and on the PowerPoints I have some animations, rather simple floor plan, just squares and circles, and not any attempt at controlling sizes or positions or anything like that. It's just to teach the people the basic issues there. I want to show you a couple things. I also show how that's kind of faint up there. I should make that a little darker, but justification, sanctification, and glorification are illustrated in the three-phase ministry of the sanctuary. And then, of course, the daily service and the yearly service and so on. So this is a little bit of a, I'm just going to go click on to the end. I've got all this animated about the 70 weeks and the 2,300 days. Whoops, I kind of went too fast there. Just so you know, the price of the book and quantity discounts and so on. The book is published by Teach Services of Ringgold, Georgia. Their office is just 3 miles from our house. They are wonderful to work with. If you're ever thinking of writing a book, I would highly recommend them. But in this day and age of what we call self-publishing, it's totally different. The whole thing is turned upside down ever since the internet came in. So that nowadays, or in olden days, you would write a manuscript and you'd send it here and send it there and wait for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months to find out if they liked it or didn't like it. Now, if you want to write a book and publish it, you can. You can. Just find a publisher. There's lots of them on the internet, and they're not cheap. They are not cheap. It's going to be thousands of dollars that you're going to pay with no guarantee that your book will ever sell, because you are going to be, the onus of promotion is going to be on you as the author. And the only thing with Teach Services is their package includes a lot of marketing. So they're doing a lot of marketing, and I'm also doing marketing to make this thing work. Through my website, through personal contacts, and through meetings like this. The PowerPoints you can see there, and we'll be at the table in the back there in case you want to avail yourself. Could I have a couple of volunteers, please, to pass out these cards? And you can each take one, and if you want more, I have more, plenty now. We have time for some questions, so perhaps you have a thought or two that you'd like to ask.
You mentioned that it was elementary on not deep detail. Would it be something that would be useful for children?
It's a little high. It's a little. I would say 12 years and older. Yeah. By the way, Jeff was also one of my student pastors in Benton Harbor, and so we're really happy to see him here tonight. Any other questions? Okay, apparently not. So I'm glad that I could be with you this evening, and my wife and I will be back there at the table, and we'll turn the video off there too. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.